Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a story of forgotten wars, shifting gods, and the very foundation of a civilization, all of it hidden inside the ancient verses of the Vedas. This is an epic story you've probably never heard, and trust me, it explains way more about our world than you might think.
But let's kick things off with a huge mystery. Have you ever stopped to think why this supreme, thunder-wielding king of the Vedic gods, a deity once so powerful that people literally lived and died for him, is barely a household name today? Well, the answer to that question opens up this incredible story of epic change.
So, to really get this, we've got to look at the Vedas a little differently. Not just as religious texts, but as something much more fundamental. Think of them as India's original source code. Yeah, stick with me here. Imagine an entire culture is like a computer. The Vedas, they're the operating system. This is the ancient code written thousands of years ago that basically set the rules for everything. Language, social norms, how people viewed their world. It was, quite literally, the blueprint for civilization. And right at the core of that original operating system, that source code, was one towering figure. Indra. For a long, long time, he was the unquestioned king of the gods, a deity who just perfectly captured the whole vibe of his age. And I'm not exaggerating. In the earliest Veda, the Rig Veda, Indra was just everything. He wasn't some distant, philosophical type of god. No, he was the god of action. We're talking war, raw power, and unapologetic desire. Entire clans would march into battle in his name, seeking his favor for victory and for wealth. And this right here, this shows you just how huge that cultural shift was. You see, the values Indra represented, being a warrior, seeking power, embracing desire for real-world success, are in stark contrast to the ideals we usually associate with modern deities, right? Things like devotion, surrender, and detachment. This wasn't just swapping one god for another. This was a fundamental change in the very idea of what a god is supposed to be. And here's what's so fascinating. Indra wasn't perfect. Not even close. The texts are full of stories about him being flawed, boastful, and constantly drinking the intoxicating elixir, soma. He even brags about his power. But here's the kicker. He was worshipped because of all that. He represented a culture that believed if you want something, you declare it, and you do everything in your power to go out and get it. But of course, Indra's reign at the top didn't last. A massive cultural shift was already underway, one that would completely rewrite the divine order and push Indra from the center stage right to the sidelines. You know, this change wasn't just philosophical, it was also geographical. You can actually track it in the texts themselves, this great migration of the Vedic people, moving from their heartland in the northwest, eastward across the Gangetic Plains. And with each step, they met new people, they absorbed new ideas, and their entire belief system began to evolve. And this is what that looks like in practice. As societies shifted from being nomadic warrior clans to settling down in large agricultural kingdoms, well, the need for a hardcore warrior god like Indra just faded. Instead, deities who reflected these new values rose to the top. Rudra, an early form of Shiva, became popular with people interested in asceticism and a life beyond the material. And Vishnu, who was just a minor deity in the Rig Veda, grew into the central figure representing social harmony and cosmic order, exactly the kinds of values you need for a large, complex society. And all of this really culminates in the rise of gods like Krishna. I mean, just think about a festival like Holi, where caste and clan barriers just dissolve in this explosion of color. This symbolized a totally new cultural ideal, one that valued inclusivity and unity over the rigid, clan-based loyalties of the past. Okay, so this epic transformation, it wasn't just some slow, gradual process. It was actually supercharged by real, historical conflicts. We're talking about massive wars and forgotten tales that literally shaped the destiny of the entire subcontinent. And the greatest of these was the Dasharajna Yuddha, the War of 10 Kings. This is like the climax event of the entire Rig Veda. You have this huge coalition of 10 tribes, united by the sage Vishwamitra, waging war against the single Bharata tribe and its king, Sudas. And somehow, against all odds, the Bharatas won this stunning victory, establishing a new center of power in the legendary land of Kurukshetra. But here's the lost part of the story, something you find in later Vedic texts. The dominance of Kurukshetra didn't last. We're told a tribe called the Salvas attacked and completely destroyed this great center. This collapse forced the cultural capital to shift eastward again to the land of Panchal, a place described as being far more diverse and mixed, which just accelerated the whole move away from that old, rigid Vedic culture.
So what? Why does any of this ancient history, these lost wars and shifting gods, actually matter to us now? Because understanding this source code is actually essential for navigating the complex, diverse world we live in today. This history teaches us that India's incredible diversity isn't some modern accident. It's woven into its fabric from the very beginning. We can build empathy when we see how cultures are always changing, absorbing, and evolving. And ultimately, it proves that history is never a single, simple story. It's a rich, layered tapestry made of countless threads. Which, funnily enough, brings us all the way back to Indra. It's interesting to think about, isn't it? As modern India becomes more ambitious and assertive on the global stage, you could argue we're seeing a return of that ancient energy, that unapologetic desire to achieve, to build, to strive for greatness. Perhaps that's the spirit of Indra, re-emerging for an India 2.0. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Cultures, just like operating systems, are never finished. They are constantly being updated, patched, and rewritten by new generations. So the real question is, as we move forward, how will our own source code continue to evolve?